Welcome to the Cole and Noah, Our Friends podcast.
Yeah, come on, let's go.
This is a very deep, intentional podcast where we talk about whatever the heck we want to because we're friends. And that's it.
We have a well-written script, everything to the T.
Yeah, that's right. I'm reading. There's a teleprompter right now. It's rolling. And it says, Cole reads, there's a teleprompter right now. Pause.
Wow.
It's
amazing.
rolling.
Amazing. The budget for the show is just through the roof. All of Lifegate's lasting impact goes to this podcast. They believe in it that much.
We're still making lasting impact jokes. It's done. It's over.
Yes.
But it's not done leaving a mark.
Amen.
Amen. So this is episode 1. Unfortunately, it was supposed to be episode 2. And I put in too small of an SD card, and we lost our first recording. So
we got
great.
about 8 minutes of episode 1.
8 minutes.
Where it was basically just intro.
Oh, we talked about so many things. We talked about Doctor Strange.
Yep.
We talked about
Marvel movies.
We talked about Age of Ultron. We
The
talked
Disney Plus shows.
So much of it. I don't know if we're going to talk about it again. Maybe we will.
We covered a lot.
What do you want to talk about? Right now, Noah, what do you want to know about? What do you want to...
Well, I was just telling Cole before we started that the thing that's sweeping the nation right now is the new Kenobi show.
And definitely not Stranger Things. That's not sweeping anybody.
Yeah, Stranger Things is. I just finished that last night. Taryn and I just finished that last night. So many
mixed feelings about this show.
Yeah, it is really good. The one thing I'll say is that show is so well done. But holy moly, is this season dark. Yeah. And I knew right when I saw the first trailer, I was like, ooh, this is going to be testing for quite a bit, or like quite a few people. I can just see that.
Yep. It was testing for us. Kylie and I watched the first episode. Spoiler alert. We're talking about Stranger Things now.
Here we go.
You teed up Kenobi, but now we're talking Stranger Things.
Yeah. First episode. Spoilers. Potentially. Here we go. 3, 2, 1.
I can't believe Billy died.
That's a season 3 spoiler. If you haven't seen season 3 of Stranger Things at this point,
yeah, it's too late.
It came out 3 years ago.
Hey, what's your spoiler policy on like when are you no longer feel bad about spoiling things? I have a legit policy on this.
It depends on the movie.
Okay.
Truthfully, because certain stuff I'm like, were you really concerned about this? So certain movies and shows, I would say, like, for me, it's like 6 months, depending on the movie.
You are generous.
Yeah, I would say, depending on the movie. And 6 months, sometimes it depends, because most of my friends will see the movie. Like, the movies I want to see, my friends want to see.
Yeah,
so, like,
fair.
So, for me, like, I won't publicly say anything online or join in a discussion.
Okay, that's fair. That's good.
Like, with a wider audience. With my friends, I'll give it, like, a week.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, okay, if you haven't seen The Batman, or if you haven't seen Endgame, or if you haven't seen this movie, or this movie, I'll give you a week. Because, right. Or like if you're like, hey, I legitimately can't go, I'm somewhere and I can't go see it, then whatever. But so like a week, but usually like greater discussion, like online stuff. Like if I was going to share my opinion on like Instagram or something, then that's
your
like
6 month.
Yeah, I'd wait like 6 months.
That makes sense. Okay, that's good. Yeah, I was going to say a month. But I'm with you actually on the social media things. I'm like, if a movie's been out for a month, a show especially, because it doesn't cost as much.
Nope.
To go, like, if you're like, oh, I watch this thing I want to see it on Disney Plus, but we don't have Disney Plus. Oh, I guess I better spend $10 this month. Mm-hmm. Versus I'm going to go to the movies where it's way more expensive. Anyways, I give it a month. If it's been out for a month and you haven't seen it and you are physically around me, I'm not stopping myself from talking about. I'll probably ask just to be sure, but like you said,
have you seen this? But if you're in like, if you and I are in conversation and we're talking about, let's say, at this point now, if we're talking about Doctor Strange, it's been out for nearly a month-ish. Yeah. Well, no, not even. It's only been out for like 2-3 weeks.
It's close.
When did it come out?
I still feel it in my body where I'm like, oh, I got to be careful about what I spoil with that one.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, because there's some stuff. But now, for me, also a good barometer is when Marvel releases things.
Yes.
So like when Marvel releases pictures from like the movie. So like they released, I'm not going to say, well, no, we've already talked about it, but when they release like the screenshot of the people who are in the Illuminati.
Oh yeah.
In that, or like for example, Spider-Man No Way Home, when they released the renders for all 3 Spider-Men, that's when I was like, okay, we're good.
It's
good
public now. The other thing is everything shows up on like YouTube and Instagram.
Oh, instantly,
right away.
Instantly.
That's where, like, personally, if there's a movie out that I want to see, and I don't want spoilers for it, and I can't see it the night it comes out, I will not be on social media until I go see it, because that's just the worst
just never
way.
know.
It's the worst way to have things ruined.
Even going back to Stranger Things a little bit, but last night I went and I wanted to know who, spoiler for all of Stranger Things Season 4, kind of, but not really, it's in the trailer. The main villain of this is called Vecna.
Yeah.
And I've wanted to know who plays Vecna and who voices Vecna, and I couldn't find anything about it. And if you watch the rest of the season, you'll find
it's because he's from the Upside Down. They don't have internet access. So
exactly. It hasn't been posted yet. It's a real person.
Up and coming monster actor. Nobody knows him. Vecna.
Vecna.
This
just
year's
like
Oscar
Mario
goes.
His name is Vecna.
Vecna.
But anyways, so I saw something on IGN that was like, the actor who plays Vecna comes out about what that was like playing Vecna. And I figured it was like the costume and whatever.
Sure.
Right away, it says spoiler alert at the top of the video.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Not thinking anything of it. And then the first image I see is the person who ends up being Vecna. And I was like, oh, dang it. I was 2 episodes away from finding this out. So I stopped watching the video, so that was kind of fun.
Yeah.
But, so I, from the jump, again, this is coming from the perspective of somebody who is like huge into horror movies. I used to love horror movies. I'd literally watch them by myself. Like, I'm a weirdo.
I can't.
Yeah.
You keep going.
I
keep
am
saying
a weirdo.
words.
Yeah, I am a weirdo. And so for me, this one, it didn't hit any of the super heavy boxes that, like, for example, the movie that shut me off to most horror movies now was Hereditary. Mm-hmm. That's the movie that, like, shut it all off for me. That I was like, I can't do this anymore.
It's like a spiritual thing, or that just creeped me out too much?
Hereditary, both. It creeped me out, but it was also like on a spiritual level because it was so heavily demonic.
Yeah.
Like so heavily demonic that I had to be like, okay, I'm gonna draw the line here.
Yeah.
I can handle slasher movies like the Halloween movies. I go see those in theaters with my mom because my mom, whatever. Side note,
it's
Halloween,
your mom's fault.
The new Halloween movies are all follow-ups to the very first Halloween movie. So they pretended that Halloween that came out in 1978 was the first, and then the Halloween that came out in 2018 was the sequel to that. So Halloween 2 through Resurrection didn't happen.
Sure.
They just erased that. So these are follow-ups to that. My mom saw the original Halloween in theaters when she was like 18 or something like that.
Yeah.
And so I thought it would be cool to go with my mom to see like the sequel to it. So those I can deal with. Anything that teeters on like demonic, I just can't deal with.
Yeah.
In terms of like those horror movies. And so for me, this season of Stranger Things is, like I said, very dark. And episode 1, it does not shy away from that. Like towards the end of the episode, it gets heavy. And they're really hitting on like, you know what's funny? Before this came out, in the lost episode of Cole and Noah, our friends, we talked about you not playing D&D.
We did.
Because of the implications of it being demonic. And
at the time, yes. There's more there, but...
Yes, there's way more there. But it's funny because this whole season deals with that.
Yeah.
It develops more as the season goes on.
Yeah.
And so it's funny that we literally hit on that, and then this show comes
I had
out.
a friend telling me... A friend who's like an advocate for D&D, loves Jesus, and he's like, hey, I love D&D, and here's why it's okay. And he was like, I'm pretty sure, this was maybe 6-8 months ago, he was like, I'm pretty sure the new Stranger Things season that's coming is gonna lean into the satanic panic of the 80s. And I was like, oh no. Yep. But also cool, maybe, I don't know.
And it does.
And it did. You can see it right away in the first episode. I'm like, oh, okay, they're gonna go there. You said it, but it is well written, like as far as story and film goes, like it's really, really good. It's so Kylie and I were talking about it for like an hour last night. We were like, are we gonna keep watching? Are we gonna stop? What do we feel like we feel Jesus saying? What's our conscience saying? But gosh, we do just want to keep watching it because it's so good and it's so bad. So
it's really dark. And this is coming from somebody whose favorite superhero is Batman.
Sure.
So
Why didn't Stranger Things turn you off?
I truthfully, I can't really even explain it. I think especially once you have the context of the rest of the season,
sure.
it'll make more sense to you if you guys choose to watch it. If not, we'll have another conversation and I can discuss it.
Sure. But we read up on like the wiki of like what's the basic plot for the rest of season 4.
And so for me, it I don't know. I think I don't know. It's weird. It still feels fantastical to me, almost in the way that Doctor Strange does, where they hit a lot on the satanic panic, but they never, the main characters with what's happening, it never toes that line for me because there's so many mythical things that happen. Like Vecna is this basically squid monster-esque thing with these tendrils, and so the darkest parts for me were the spoilers, I'm not going to say who, but the deaths that happen, those are really dark. And it seems very demonic in that first episode.
Yep.
And then in the following episodes, there's some stuff that seems very demonic. But as you go further into the season, it becomes less and less demonic to me personally, and becomes more of that season 1 fantastical mythology type story.
Yeah. They've done that before where you start out feeling like this is almost like a poltergeist movie. Weird spiritual creepy stuff. And then you, I guess, air quote, realize oh no, it's a monster. Like the moment I felt that shift with season 1 is when they're like trying to figure out what the heck is this thing and like what is the Demogorgon, how does it work, and then they realize, oh, the thing can like smell blood. It's like a shark, and that instantly I was like, okay, now we're in sci-fi. Like now they're hunting a creature. And it's not, now they've shifted out of, you thought it was supernatural, but now what we're dealing with instead is just like, there's a thing that lives in this upside down place.
And that for me is the shift that happens that makes it better, doable, so to speak. Yeah. Right. And so, that first episode, I immediately had a pause.
Looks like a demon, sounds like a demon, but it's actually a squid.
Yeah, it's a squid man who's burnt. So for me, I think the first episode really gave me a lot of pause because I was like, oh, and the name of their D&D club is the Hellfire Club, so that immediately will give you pause as well, a little bit, not super bad, but you're just like, oh, are they really going to dive into it? And
if you're looking for boundaries and reasons to pause, you'll find many. Yeah,
and it really, for me, it didn't dive too heavily into it. Like I would say even, I can distance it, but I would say even Doctor Strange toes that line way heavier.
Really? Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I feel that.
And so I think the darkest thing about this one is the brutality that they show with this specific kind of death. Because for me, it doesn't toe on possession. If anything, it toes more along the lines of like the sleep paralysis, which can be a little dark. And so I think if you guys get past the first, and this isn't me saying like
you should get past it, but
again, Cole and I talked about this in the first episode. If this is something that you deal with, where it's like this will cause you to stumble or be fearful and be worried about things like that, then don't watch it. Absolutely, I'm 100% saying it's dark. I just, in my experience with watching things that are darker and things like that, this one, as it carried on, gave me less and less pause because it became more. It just became more of that universe.
You understand more of what's going on, who the bad guy is, where he came from. In that
first episode, the things that happen, it's just it really, this one dives really heavily into the scary nature of Stranger Things. And so it plays on that pretty heavily. But I truthfully think it gets better and easier to digest in a way. And so I think if you get past that first episode being so grim at the end, they hit on some other things. There's a point, this isn't a huge spoiler, but there's a point where there's like a town hall meeting and somebody comes in and is talking about how this is the devil and we're not going to let the devil take over Hawkins and things like that. And then so it shows kind of the religious zealot almost. He's just like, this is the devil. And so there's that, but like they don't dive into, there's no rituals that take place. There's no possession. There's no There's no pentagrams. There's nothing dark. There's no heavy symbolism other than you could make a case for the upside down being like demonic.
Right.
And so.
Right.
But truthfully, I think if you get past it, the thing that really almost threw me off to this season is there's a clip in the trailer, and I don't know if you watch the trailers, but where it shows a family going into this house. Mm-hmm. And instantly I was like, oh, great. It's going to be a demon. It's going to be a poltergeist. I'm not going to be able to watch this season of Stranger Things. But that is not the case at all.
Oh, okay.
And again, as you watch, you find that out.
Sure. So, yeah. They really do. It feels very much like they, as the writers of the show, they're showing with the whole satanic panic stuff that like you as the viewer and the characters in the show are thinking the same thing. Mm-hmm. It's, oh, this is Satan. And then the rest of the story is basically them saying, actually, it's not. Looks like it, but it's not. As a story. That's the story it feels like they're trying to write, or elements of the story they're trying to write, which doesn't justify saying like, oh, so you should be able to watch it, no problem. Right now, Kylie and I are in a spot where we're like, no, we need to, because the first episode took us by such surprise, and then we pressed on through most of the second episode and then started getting to a scene in the second episode. We were both just like, we don't want to watch what happens here because of what happened in the first one. So
what scene? Can you describe it, and you don't have to spoil it.
Oh, how can I describe it? Possible spoilers ahead.
Is it with,
it's when
with Nancy and Fred?
Yeah, and with the clock, and
yes,
then you're like, okay, this is happening. And I'm trying to pick up cues, and I'm like, okay, she's over here, he's over there.
Yeah,
clock, now it's dark. He'd been there for a while. I don't think he's getting out of this one.
Yeah, so
I don't want to watch the rest of
truthfully,
this.
you will see if you press on, and I'm not going to say who or what, but you'll see that death sequence 4 or 5 more times.
Dang.
And so if you know it's coming and you turn away, there's nothing important around that other than you just see it happen.
Sure.
So there's not like a flash between stuff.
Yeah.
You'll see it happen, and then it's done.
Yeah.
So if that's the thing that's giving you pause, it sounds like I'm trying to sell the show, but I just it is really such a good story, and it's such a compelling story that like it really sets you up to where you're like, oh dang, I have to wait to finish this season.
Yeah, yeah.
And they leave so many loose threads that they're like, oh, what's going to happen in July?
What might happen next?
And so if that's the thing that's giving you the most pause, I think if you just press on, you I don't know. You don't have to, for sure. You can those scenes you can easily like mute your TV and look away and then unmute it, and then you're set.
You can go into it going, and this person's dead. I'm gonna mute this and move forward.
And those scenes don't really add much other than you see that person dies.
Right.
And that's it.
They're there for the scare.
And so yeah,
We're total opposites there, where like I'm not a horror movie person. I did not grow up that way. My sister kind of did, and I would watch a little bit. My mom a little bit too, because I remember they watched Poltergeist when I was like 7, I think, and that was the moment.
Dude, that would ruin me.
Oh yeah, I think it did ruin me, because after that I had so much intrigue about horror movies. And so much fear about them. Like, I could not get them out of my head after seeing even little bits of it. Yeah. And I'm still that way. Like, we watched episode 1. I was like, I feel like, let's pray. And then we're getting ready for bed. And I'm lying in bed. My eyes are wide awake. Yeah. And I'm like, ugh.
See, I think that's where even, like, my anxiety possibly started. Was I distinctly remember being at my grandma's house, middle of the day, and just flipping through channels, and I saw. I remember it was the USA Network. I can even remember that
USA Network.
And this is when I was like 5 or 6, and I was flipping through channels and popped on the USA Network, and I remember it was Child's Play 3. And
never heard of that.
Yeah, it's Chucky, if you know who Chucky is.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I distinctly remember seeing that movie and just being transfixed and watching it. And then my grandma was like, no, we're not going to watch that. And then turned it away. And then I turned it back, and she didn't think anything of it because it just looked like a boy playing with a doll. And then I distinctly remember like seeing all the stuff that happens with Chucky and just being mortified. And then I don't know if it was that week or the next week, but I remember distinctly. And it was this traumatizing that I can tell you in detail the nightmares that I had about that movie.
Wow.
Because every night for the next week or later maybe 2 weeks later. I don't remember when it was. I can't remember that timeline. But I can remember every night for that week, I had the same dream, and it got longer every night.
Dude.
And so every night that dream would get longer and scarier.
Yep.
And then finally it went away, and it was fine. But I can tell you exactly beat for beat that dream that I had. And, like, awful. And from that moment, I think that's where, like, my anxiety started, was in that moment at, like, 5 or 6 years old.
Yep.
And so for me, I've been the same. And so I think for me, watching horror movies, it was like my way to, like, sit and, like, cope with that anxiety. As I was just like, well, I'm already fearful of everything. Let's just add a little bit more. And so, yeah.
That makes me so sad for young Noah.
Yep. But I've dealt with it. And I think, again, this is kind of random, but I really do think God has been kind enough to even, like, show me, hey, this is potentially where this started. Because I didn't have a bad upbringing with my parents, and I didn't really have anywhere where that would have started or anything, where they would, like, make me worry about anything.
Sure.
I can't be sure, but that's genuinely where I think that.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Started, so.
You know, it's not terrifying.
Kenobi. I don't know, man.
Kenobi makes me feel good. Okay.
Obi-Wan looks closely like Jesus. Pretty terrifying.
He does. That's not an accident.
Well, white Jesus, anyways.
Yeah, white Jesus.
Yeah.
The real Jesus. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry.
We just want you to know that Cole said a joke there. That was a joke.
Yeah, trigger/spoiler warning.
Comedy warning. That was a joke.
What's your... Who are you when it comes to Star Wars, Noah? Are you a fan? I actually don't know this about you.
So what's super funny is I used to love Star Wars as a kid, but it was mainly because of the toys. So again, I can distinctly remember a toy that I hunted for as a kid, and when I found it, it was my holy grail figure. Yeah. And it was an Anakin Skywalker from Attack of the Clones. Yep. And he had 2 lightsabers. This toy didn't just come with one, but he came with 2.
This is the Anakin who chops off Dooku's head.
Yes, so he came with 2 lightsabers, and I remember being distraught one time, because at the time you could actually take the saber or the light out of the saber and, like, swap them.
I think I remember these.
And so I lost one of those at one point, and I was devastated. And it shouldn't have mattered, because I had another Anakin Skywalker toy, but it wasn't as cool because it was less posable. So that one... one of the arms was stiff because it had a lightsaber built into the arm that you would slide up. Yep. And so that was... But I remember distinctly, I loved the toys. I had a ton of the Star Wars toys, and I would buy them all the time. And I'd see the movies. Like, I saw Phantom Menace in theaters. I saw Attack of the Clones in theaters. I saw Revenge of the Sith in theaters. I saw all those in theaters. I've seen all the recent Star Wars in theaters, except for Rogue One. I didn't see Rogue One because...
Dang, that's too bad, because Rogue One is actually pretty good. Well, you keep talking. I'll share my opinion.
I haven't seen Rogue One or Solo because, again, I don't really care about side stories.
Sure.
I didn't play Force Unleashed. I obviously, much like every child who grew up in the early 2000s, loved Star Wars Battlefront 2. Yes. Because that's easily one of the best games like that. And I would play I remember I played other Star Wars games growing up as well. I played the Phantom Menace game, which wasn't awesome, but it was cool at the time. But yeah, so Star Wars for me is just like, I think it's cool, and I will usually see the movies because they are just such, there are such moments in time when those movies come out. Yeah. When those movies come out, goodness.
When those movies comes out.
Yeah, when the movies comes out, those ones. And I'll see them, but I don't think I've ever seen New Hope. I really don't. I've definitely seen, I think I've seen Empire Strikes Back. I'm pretty sure I've seen it in its entirety at least. And then what's the last one? Return of the Jedi. Is that it?
Return of the King?
Yeah, that one. I legitimately don't remember. But I don't know if I've ever seen New Hope. I think I've seen the other 2 of the first trilogy. But yeah, Star Wars for me is just kind of like, you can take it or leave it kind of thing. Sure. It's just one fandom that I've never been like super gung-ho in. Obviously, as a kid, I liked it, but that's just because I love toys. Like I'd have my wrestling toys. I'd have my superhero toys. I'd have my G.I. Joes. I'd have like all of these different action figures that I would have. And I just have like buckets of them at my parents' house. And so I just loved toys. And like, what better toys are there than like Star Wars toys and things like that? So
yeah, that makes sense.
And so for me, Kenobi has been one that's been interesting just for the prospect of Anakin Skywalker, Hayden Christensen coming back. I think that's super cool. But again, it almost falls in line with like the Black Widow movie situation for me.
Really?
Where I like have a hard time caring because I'm like, I know how his story ends.
My heart hurts that you just compared Obi-Wan Kenobi to Black Widow. And I love Black Widow, but
only in the way that the movie, like, and obviously they would have never been able to do a Kenobi TV series without Disney Plus. So it makes sense when it's coming out. Black Widow had legitimately no excuse other than stupid Hollywood execs being like, a woman-led movie? That can't make money, right? It's like, you're dumb. You should have released this after Civil War. Like, come on. It's just, yeah. So anyway, that's a whole other can of worms.
Sure.
But so Kenobi for me, it's harder for me because like I know how his story ends already. And so I'm like,
that's true.
Should I really care? But I know there's a lot of in between. And Star Wars lore is so much more than like the 9 movies that have come out with the supplemental movies of the other 2 and stuff like that. And so there's so much more with books and video games that are canon.
Clone Wars series.
And the Clone Wars series being canon. And all of these things being canon. Because like Mandalorian, I still haven't even watched.
You haven't watched The Mandalorian?
I haven't seen a single episode.
No what?
I haven't seen Book of Boba Fett.
Oh my. Well, that's okay. Yeah. That one's.
So yeah, I haven't seen a single Mandalorian episode.
Oh my gosh. I can't believe it.
It's just like I
can't believe it.
The supplemental stuff I haven't seen. And Kenobi is making a case for me to watch it. And The Mandalorian has always like been one that I've like wanted to watch, but I not really wanted to watch, but been like, should I? Yeah. Shouldn't I? Yeah. Will I? Won't I? Kind of thing. And so it's not a bad thing. Like I'm not anti Star Wars. I just think,
meh.
You know what I mean?
Sure, that's fair.
And like chances are, realistically, I don't think my wife would really want to watch those shows with me, and so I'd just be watching them alone. So trying to find time when I like want to watch those and not other things that I want to watch is.
Yeah, that's hard. That's fair. I have respect for the person who's like, Star Wars is just kind of meh, because it, for all intents and purposes, I think that's how most people should react when they see Star Wars. It's like, it's meh. If you see it as a kid, it's like magical. Yeah. That's really cool. I wasn't like a diehard Star Wars fan. I saw all the prequels when I was a kid. I thought that was cool because I had like, my parents were like, oh yeah, Star Wars is neat. I had an uncle who was like, Star Wars is super cool. And it was just like culturally, you understand it's a Star phenomenon. Wars is a thing. Yeah. And you want to be a part of it. So
people who have never seen the movies confuse me.
Yeah, a little bit.
I get that, and it's probably the same way you reacted with Mandalorian and that stuff. Like you're like,
that makes me so excuse me.
Well, because again, it's just like, why wouldn't I? Like I have access to it. Why wouldn't
you watch it? Why wouldn't you watch a good TV show? The thing that I've become as an adult, I've become a Star Wars fan more and more. It was cool when I was a kid, but the prequel movies were like not that great, and people dumped on them a lot when I was a teenager, and then I didn't rewatch the originals, and then for some reason somewhere along the way it just like started getting you know what it was the new sequels, when it was like Disney's going to be making episodes 7, 8 and 9, and we were like, these could be cool, these could be really really cool. And then I started really getting into it. That's when, and the Clone Wars series came out when I was younger, but I never watched it all the way through, and I had plenty of people saying, you need to go rewatch those because they are actually really great for story. And that's when I got Kylie and I, when COVID hit, we blitzed through the Clone Wars series, and that I think really changed my fandom for Star Wars, because I actually really love the stories now. The movies on their own are not that, like, I wouldn't be like, that's a movie you just gotta see. It's more like culturally, you don't want to miss out on this. This is actually pretty cool. And the stories that they're writing, the meanings that they're trying to like hide inside the narrative, and I'm a huge narrative guy, I love narrative, are really, really cool, really compelling. The stuff with the prequels that like unfortunately didn't get communicated and delivered very well are actually really compelling, like the issue with like Qui-Gon. And Dave Filoni talks about this. Dave Filoni's awesome, so is Jon Favreau, and they get it. They just get it. Mm-hmm. You can find Dave Filoni talking about the issue with like the big deal between Qui-Gon and Anakin versus Obi-Wan, and Anakin is Obi-Wan needs a father, and he loses him in Qui-Gon, and instead he gets Obi-Wan, who doesn't necessarily even want to train him, doesn't totally believe in him, doesn't see what Qui-Gon sees in him, and that's why that fight between Darth Maul and Qui-Gon Jinn is like the duel of the fates, because if Qui-Gon wins, Anakin doesn't end up being what we all know he's going to become.
Yeah.
But if Qui-Gon loses, then he will, because Obi-Wan is not like the father that he needs, which is why it's a big deal when Obi-Wan, like episode 3, he cuts him down and he's like, "You were my brother," right? But he needed more than that. He needed more than, and Obi-Wan.
That's fascinating.
I've
never heard any of that.
There's so much, dude. There's so much in
See,
Star Wars.
the way you're talking about this is the way I talk about Batman.
Yeah, that's true.
Another can of worms.
That is another can of worms. Yeah, there's a ton of meaning and narrative stuff that's so cool with Star Wars. It gets missed because it's not necessarily like the movies. I don't think were totally directed and written the greatest, especially episode 2. That movie is terrible. It's so bad. But now with Kenobi was sand. With Kenobi, I loved Kenobi. He was my favorite. Now I'm really excited about the Kenobi series, because the more, after you go back and like you watch Clone Wars, you rewatch the prequels as an adult, you realize the Jedi Order is like super messed up. It's got a ton of problems and really misdirected Anakin quite a bit. Qui-Gon Jinn represented some opposition to that, because Qui-Gon was like, and Obi-Wan talks about it too. Qui-Gon's like, not on the Jedi Council because he doesn't see eye to eye on everything with Jedi, and Obi-Wan's like, why are you the way that you are? They'd put you on the council. Don't you want to be on the council? And you can tell that he doesn't, and he's the different that Anakin kind of is also, and why that matchup would have worked really, really well. Anakin gets really messed up with the Jedi Council when you introduce Ahsoka Tano in the Clone Wars. Like, you see a lot of that dynamic as well. You just see the building of Anakin isn't just a guy who turned evil. Anakin is a guy who is pushed further towards evil because of the failings of the Jedi Order and because of the dysfunction of the Jedi Order. And Obi-Wan represents a lot of it too. He's really harsh towards Anakin. He's really he's really critical of him and doesn't know how to like approve of him. You never see Obi-Wan being like endearing towards Anakin, being like, "I'm proud of you," whatever. And you can see it feeding into him, like, I just want to do enough. I just want to be good enough, kind of a thing, right? So now you have a whole series where Obi-Wan has to deal with the fact that he's failed the master that he loves, Qui-Gon Jinn, because Qui-Gon said, "Promise me you'll train the boy." He's failed Qui-Gon Jinn. He's failed his friend/brother Anakin, right? He's failed, like the Jedi have just failed because the Empire just took over everything. And now his own Master Yoda, who's still alive, was like, "You got to watch after the boy," but the boy's family wants nothing to do with the Jedi. By the boy, we mean Luke Skywalker, right? He's like, "I got to watch over Luke Skywalker," but Luke's family are like, "The Jedi are done. They're gone, and we hate them. So leave us alone." So Obi-Wan's like this character who's like, gotta wrestle with, who am I and what have I done, and is this okay, and who will I be? And then realizing Anakin is actually not dead, he's Vader. Oh my gosh, it's his development as a character that we've never gotten to see post episode 3. That's why I'm so pumped about Kenobi, because I just want to see him post the fallen Jedi Order and how he develops into old Ben and what he has to wrestle with his own internal conflict when he re-confronts Vader, because we know that's going to happen. I would love to see Ahsoka show up sometime, because I just love live action Ahsoka anytime. So those are my thoughts and feelings. I love Star Wars, and I love Obi-Wan, and I'm so excited for more episodes.
Are they going to do the traditional Disney Plus thing and do 6 episodes, or is there more?
I don't know. I haven't looked. I don't actually check those very often. I just like to go along for the ride. I just like to watch and try to figure things out along the way. I like to feel out how close are we to the end.
Ooh,
I think
that's true.
We're getting there.
I think the TV shows are pretty good at kind of telegraphing when the end is, whereas movies sometimes you're oh, this is the end, and then it spikes back up, and you're like, never mind. Yeah,
I got surprised when I had COVID last year and a half ago, after that summer camp when we all got
COVID
camp. Woof. I was miserable. That Delta variant kicked my butt, dude. But I watched through. Did you ever watch Avatar: The Last Airbender?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so I finally watched it because all my friends are like, "You need to watch it. It's great," and it was really great. And then I started watching. Oh gosh, whatever the next Avatar is with what's her bucket. If you're wondering whether or not it's as good as the first, clearly not, because you can tell. I'm just like struggling to remember all of it. Reason I bring it up, the first Airbender, a season had like anywhere from like 18 to 20 something episodes in it, right? The next ones that they did, they were like maybe 10 or 12, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. And I was not expecting that. So I'm watching it, and I feel like, oh, we're at the midway point, and there's a bunch of tension being built in the narrative. People are losing powers, and the bad guy's like really bad, and all this stuff. And I'm like, how are they going to resolve all this? And then it gets resolved, all of it, in the like next episode, because that's the finale. And I was like, oh, I thought we were halfway there.
It was like so much more.
It's like building, like you're climbing a roller coaster, and then it drops, but like only 5 feet, and that's the end of the ride. You're like,
oh, interesting.
Oh, we're done.
It's the rising action, conflict solution.
Yeah. Instead of climax, it was like climb meh. Climb meh.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never seen that. I've never seen Avatar.
Airbender?
There's certain... Yeah, I've actually never seen the blue Avatar either.
You haven't seen the blue Avatar either?
Nope.
Are you interested in the new blue Avatar?
No.
No?
No.
Wow. I can't sell you on that one, actually. I really can't.
No, I don't think anybody will be able to, truthfully. And now at this point, it's almost like I'm just holding out. I'm like, I refuse. I will not see your movie. I will not see your blue people.
Yeah. There are people out there who hate that movie. I don't understand why yet, because I've only been around people who loved it. But the only reason I loved it was because it was just whoa when it came out.
Yeah.
Visually, it was like whoa.
That's usually what James Cameron does, though.
Yeah. And now, like, that was however many years ago? 10, 15?
2008.
2008. That was a while ago. It's still a cool looking movie. And it's got some neat sci-fi stuff in it, but the plot is nothing that makes you go...
Yeah.
Whoa, you know?
And sci-fi tends to be a harder sell for me. I held out on watching Stranger Things because I started it and I was like, ooh, this is going to be a horror TV show. This is going to be good. And then all of a sudden it felt like Aliens is what I initially thought. And I was like, nope. And so I waited a month to watch the first season of Stranger Things until all the reviews came out. And then I went, okay, well, maybe there's something here. And then I watched it and I was like, wow, I was so wrong. And I think the tie for me is always sci-fi meeting something else.
Sure.
I need something else to happen.
Yeah.
But
pure sci-fi can be really, really dry. Well, because pure sci-fi needs... nothing is ever purely just one thing. Like pure drama is soap opera or reality TV.
That's true.
True sci-fi is just really dry...
Ripley's Believe It or Not.
Ripley's Believe It or Not. It's all the shows on the Sci-Fi Channel that nobody likes to watch. So, but when you mix sci-fi with like, oh, we've got some really compelling characters, there's some drama here, there's some unresolved issues between this person and that person.
Oh, it's a thriller. Oh, it's also, there's like you think of the Blade Runner movies, it's like a crime sci-fi movie.
Right. Sci-fi is not story. Sci-fi is setting.
Yeah, like, that's true.
But when they make setting story, I think it's a problem. Yeah. All of this, the Good opinion point. Of a guy who thinks he knows things about stories. I don't know that much. I'm talking like I think I know stuff,
opinions,
but I don't.
Though.
I have many opinions.
I think the thing that helps you inform those stories, though, is it's funny, like, I feel like we've tied a lot to religion, but, like, I feel like the thing that helps you
pastors,
interpret stories is, especially you being, like, a teaching pastor.
Sure.
Like, I'm a worship pastor, which is different, but you being a teaching pastor, for you'll look at a scripture, and if you're given a specific scripture, you're not just going to go, great, I'll look at this and see what it says to me. You're like, oh, no, I want to dive into what's the verse before this? What's the chapter before this? What's the book before this say that informs this? Okay, what's the book after say that informs this?
How does this connect to the biblical narrative?
Oh, let's read some commentaries. And so you're getting the greater picture of things that maybe even the original audience didn't have in that moment. And so for you, I think that kind of informs your desires for storytelling in movies or in TV shows and things like that.
That's true.
Which is...
I watch movies the way I read the Bible.
Yeah.
I do that
You
very
want
similarly.
you want all of the context.
Yeah, I wanna know what the story is because it all matters.
Mm-hmm.
It all really, really matters.
Which is funny how that honestly was one of the main reasons Cole and I even wanted to start this podcast, is because we were like, yeah, I forget what it was. We were talking about something, and then somehow it tied back to like religion. And then we were like, that's really interesting how a lot of stuff we talk about tends to go back there, which again,
sure.
Cole made a joke about it. We're both pastors at a church. Yeah. So like, obviously
it's sort of what we do with our lives.
Yeah, it's what we've chosen to do as a career.
Talking about Jesus is part of my religion.
Well, yeah.
Or like the whole of the religion.
Like the entirety.
It's like all of it.
But anyways, yeah, so that's pretty much.
Yep. I'm just a nerd that way. I love picking out like what are the themes and stuff in movies and shows, and like I'm the guy who watches the 20 to 40 minute video essays on YouTube when somebody like I watched one yesterday. Okay. I watched one yesterday that I was like, okay, hard sell, but I'll give you a chance. And they convinced me. But it was why a Goofy movie is better than you remember. And then the guy into it is like, hey, actually it might just be one of Disney's best animated musicals ever. Wow. And I was like, excuse me. Now, hold on a minute. Now, my bias, I love A Goofy Movie. It's one of my favorite movies as a kid. When Disney Plus came out, it's like the first thing I watched.
That's incredible.
It's so
That's
good.
Incredible.
And the music with Powerline is awesome. It's just great. I love that movie so much. But this guy starts breaking down. It's like a 25-minute video. Mm-hmm. It's the kind of videos that when my wife sees I'm watching them, she rolls her eyes. Yep. And the guy is actually like, hey, in musical numbers, this is usually what they're trying to break down for the
long-form content.
Yes, dude. I love it. They're the ones that I'm like, ooh, I want to watch that later. I'll actually save this in that very rarely used watch later section.
See, and for me, I feel like that's the way I'll explain things. Like I don't ever do video essays because I don't have all the editing know-how or any of that stuff. Sure. But like, that's how I felt about this most recent Batman movie. Is all the people who didn't like it, I was like, I feel like I could sway you personally.
Right.
Because I was like, I feel like as a huge Batman fan, I feel like I can read into the nuance of Batman.
Yeah.
And it's the same way I feel about Ben Affleck's Batman. Why I think I can defend Ben Affleck's Batman.
Really? Okay.
Anyways.
Yeah, we're going to have to talk about that one next time.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
In defense of Ben Affleck's Batman.
In defense of Ben. That's what we'll title it.
Next time next time on Cole and Noah are friends, Noah talks about Batman. And
surprise!
It's actually just Noah because Cole doesn't want to be a part of it. It's just Cole and Noah are friends, but Cole doesn't want to hear Noah talk about Batman again.
That's what friendship is listening when you don't want to.
The amount of times I have talked about Batman to Cole is insurmountable, and next week will be no different.
Here's the truth, Noah. I actually really enjoy when you talk about Batman because you talk about what you just said this earlier. You talk about Batman the way I was talking about Star Wars.
Yep.
And I don't know stuff about Batman, not like you do. And so you give me the
same way I feel about Star Wars.
Right.
I was like, oh, interesting.
And I'm not going to watch.
He needed a dad.
He needed a dad.
That changes the whole character for me. I was
totally.
Like, oh, Obi-Wan kind of sucked.
Obi-Wan kind of sucked. And it should change the way you view Vader and his interaction with Luke.
And Vader means father. He needed a dad, so he became dad.
I am my dad.
Luke, I am my father. Luke's like, this is very confusing.
I'm so confused.
This changes the whole thing.
Dad? Who? Yours or mine? Oh, wait. Same.
Both.
Oh my gosh, yeah. No, talk about Batman next time. Because I'm not going to watch a long-form video on it. I don't care that much about Batman to be like, well, I could watch a Batman video.
I'll be the long-form video.
Or I could watch a Goofy Movie video. Man. Okay, well, this is Cole and Noah are friends. And by the end of the episode, we are always asking, are we still friends?
I would say yes.
Okay, great. We're still friends. We'll see you guys on the next one. Okay, bye.
Goodbye.